Right, new Yorkshire Chair Colin Graves has faced questions from MPs today at a Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee meeting. For more on this, we can join our reporter Rob Jones, who was there at the hearing earlier for us. So Colin Graves faced some tough questions, didn't he, on both previous actions and comments he made?
Afternoon, Vicky. Yeah, he did. To use cricketing parlance from on the pitch, he would have known he was going to face a few bounces today, and maybe wore a couple on the helmet too throughout the course of the session. He's been repeatedly asked throughout the course of this process, ever since the initial allegations made by Azeem Rafiq, as to whether he knew anything about the racism that was going on at Yorkshire in his first term as chair, and he has repeatedly said no. And once again, he doubled down on that today and said, I knew nothing of any racism at Yorkshire. It might have been a problem with the process, might have been a problem with the protocol, but at no point did any sort of allegations come and land on my desk. He once again apologised for some of the language that he used in an interview with Sky Sports last year, where he described the dressing room problems as just banter and said that that was a poor choice of language. And then he was involved in a really interesting exchange with one of the MPs who was asking questions at the CMS hearing today as to whether or not he's apologised person to person to Azeem Rafiq and why he hasn't done so far.
Azeem Rafiq, you've given a general apology. You've apologised here to him. Why haven't you picked up the phone to apologise to him?
Certainly from my point of view, I didn't feel that was appropriate.
Why?
At the time. I've apologised today to Mr Rafiq and anybody else who experienced any discrimination or racism.
Why wasn't it appropriate to phone him?
I just had plenty of things going on around not to pick up the phone to Mr Rafiq.
You were too busy to phone him?
No, I didn't say I was too busy.
Plenty of things going on and you couldn't phone him?
Fine. If that's how you see it, I don't see it like that.
So over this long period of time, with this huge controversy, with this man experiencing this appalling behaviour, including just last week, an attack on his parents' home, and you too many things going on to phone him.
I've been out of cricket, Mr Nicholson, since September 2020. I have not been involved with running any form of cricket until I just got back in with Yorkshire 11 days ago. You
didn't have to be actively involved in cricket to phone him and to apologise for what had happened under your tenure.
Fine, I didn't do it.
I don't know why you're saying fine. It's not fine. It's really not fine. It's appalling. If I was in your position, I think anybody in your position would have picked up the phone, and I just don't understand why you've not phoned him if you're sincere in your apology.
I'm very sincere for my apology.
But you can't explain why you haven't phoned him, apart from being generally too busy.
I just didn't do it.
And I think some people watching that exchange in Westminster a little bit earlier on today would say that there's perhaps still a little bit of a lack of contrition from Colin Graves as to whether he does really regret what happened during his first term as chair, and whether there will be reservations from the wider world, the wider cricketing community, as that Yorkshire welcoming Colin Graves back to the county maybe means a return to the bad old days and all the good positive work that they have done in terms of equality, diversity and inclusion over the last couple of years, so much so that they are a while ahead of other counties in terms of that sort of thing, might well be lost in the years to come. So that was one of the questions to the outgoing chair, Harry Chatley, today, is why we have ended up with Colin Graves back at Yorkshire, why he was seen as the only viable option to provide a little bit of financial safeguarding for this county, which currently has debts of just under £17 million and wouldn't have been too far away from having to go into administration had Colin Graves not stepped in. So Chatley was asked about that during the CMS hearing, but I also spoke to him afterwards and gave him the question as to whether he thought Azeem Rafiq would welcome a personal apology from Colin Graves.
He shouldn't have made the comments he did back in June last year. I'm glad he apologised for those comments, not only before his appointment for us to approve at the EGM, but also to Azeem Rafiq today. I think he's done the right thing, and now I hope Yorkshire will be allowed to focus back on cricket and move on from this.
It was interesting, the exchange about not directly speaking to Azeem over the past couple of years or so. Having spoken to Azeem yourself, is that something do you think he would appreciate if Colin was to give him a call? I
can't really speak for Mr. Rafiq. He will be able to give you a better reaction than I would. I certainly picked up the phone to Mr. Rafiq, and I think Mr. Graves will probably pick up the phone to Mr. Rafiq as well.
I was going to say, do you think he owes him that personal touch?
I think he certainly owes him a try to do so, yes.
Looking back as well, there were a lot of questions about Colin becoming the ultimate owner of Yorkshire, and I guess just how viable some of the other options were, which I think was a point you were really keen to stress.
Yeah, so there were several viable options throughout the last 12 months when we had been looking at refinancing the club's debts. So our preferred in November was a different offer, and when that didn't proceed, we had to approach everybody else, and Mr. Graves was the only viable option left at the end of the day that we could take a decision on.
OK, so what else happened at the hearing today, Rob?
Well, right at the end of the hearing, as you just saw, much of the focus was on Yorkshire, much of the focus was on Colin Graves, but it was also the opportunity for CMS to have a little bit more of a look at English cricket as a wider picture. And you might remember last year there was a report released by the ICEC, the Independent Commission for Equity in Cricket, which said that the English game wasn't just racist but sexist and elitist as well. So the chance for a little bit of an update from the ECB, who were represented today by Richard Gould, Richard Thompson and Claire Connor as well. They were given some recommendations as part of that report from the ICEC, and the ECB said they'd be in a position to have fulfilled 60% of those recommendations come the end of the year, and they were making steps in a number of areas. Some of those things are already in place. For example, there are already equal match fees for the senior men and the senior women. There was also a target in that report that there would be equal pay for the men and women in the 100 by 2025. The ECB have said that's not possible. The ICEC again today saying that women need more power, influence and voice within the English game, saying there's more work that could be done for black cricketers as well, potentially continuing free options in terms of state schools, talent pathways to ensure that people from all areas of society can play the game. Richard Thompson has said a number of times that he wants cricket to be the most inclusive team sport in the country. I think there was a broad agreement from both the ECB and the ICEC that there are steps being made in the right direction, but there is still a lot of work to do to get to that target, which Richard Thompson set out so many times today about it being the most inclusive game of all.
Yeah, sounds like they've got some way to go yet then, Rob. Thank you very much.